Our next speaker, the one and only one lady speaker, in Asia since 1991, is an expert business and marketing specialist with more than 25 years of agency, technology, and consulting experience. She is an active advocate of the data-driven marketing industry and has served as chairperson of DMAS since 2012. She represents the direct and data-driven marketing industries on several Singapore government councils, including the Advertising Standards Authority of Singapore and NTUC Associates Program. She's none other than Miss Lisa Watson. May we welcome her on stage, please.
All right. Sorry, I'm just getting my toys out. Are we good on the microphone? So actually, I'm somebody who doesn't really need too much of a microphone. In the office, I'm known as the woman with no secrets, as I have such a terribly loud voice. So I'm so excited to be here today. If you want to switch over to my slides, that would be great. I'm going to talk a bit about changing the customer experience and taking a look at new ways that companies are using data to change the way they interact with their customers. And I suppose everyone knows who this little guy is here, right? So I always put Pokemon in the title, because that means everybody wants to attend my talk, even when they're very young, so that's actually kind of a fun thing. So, you know, we're in this crazy world today. Our world is changing very fast. And in fact, it's changing faster than we can even keep pace with sometimes. I found this graph, which I think is quite interesting. This was in Fortune magazine, and it basically shows the speed of innovation. It's an innovation curve. Interestingly for me, I think you might be aware, my day job is I work for HP, and it was interesting to me that the founding moment of the innovation curve was the invention of the printing press, which this is the invention in Germany of the printing press, not the invention in China, which was in 1377, but nevertheless. Between when we had the printing press and when we finally had electricity to keep lights on in the shop took 400 years, which was really quite amazing for people in the printing industry. They can't imagine that everyone printed only during daylight hours for so many years. The telescope, Newton invented his telescope in 1668, and 300 years later, we actually had men walking on the moon. If you can imagine, it was 1998, only 1998, when we first saw Google on the scene. Right? And they haven't changed that much. It's pretty amazing. I mean, they fixed the logo a little bit, modernized it some, but actually the Google experience is very much the way it was. Almost, hard to say, 20 years ago. Right, next year will be 20 years. And by 2015, we've actually advanced from being able to search the internet to actually having the Internet of Things. Anyone heard of a dash button? Anybody know what a dash button is? Amazon has actually created a very interesting concept. They have something, in this case, obviously Tide laundry detergent. So they have a dash button that you put next to the washing machine. And what you do is when you get low on laundry detergent, you press this button, and it triggers a box or a portion, a carton or something of Tide, at least one bottle, to be put into your Amazon shopping cart automatically, right? And I will say they do then send you a text message to make sure you really want this, right? And then in some places where they have same-day delivery, you can have the laundry detergent replenished before the end of the day. So laundry detergent for me is a bit of a low-interest category. So to me, that isn't the highlight. Today they have over 280 of these buttons. By the way, the manufacturers actually pay for them to begin with. And they have them in various categories. So household and office, kids, baby, and pets. I mean, babies especially, right? Nappies and formula, right? Any of those products, very convenient for mom to be able to just order more. Beverage and grocery. For me, the highlight was when I discovered Haagen-Dazs. Haagen-Dazs has a dash button. And I know very much why they have the text message going to make sure you really ordered it, because you can only imagine having all the treats at home with little dash buttons and how many things would end up in your shopping cart if you didn't really monitor that a bit. But beauty and apparel, and of course, music, sports, outdoors, etc. So this is a very interesting and exploding area. What Amazon is counting on every time you press that dash button, of course, not only are they getting the commercial transaction, but they're also getting data. Right? So our world is exploding into this, into a world, and a marketing world that is based on data, and the chairman, as you just heard, of DMAS, which used to be the Direct Marketing Association of Singapore, is now the Data-Driven Marketing Association of Singapore. And we've really seen the marketing decisions that are being made today becoming more and more data-driven. Now, it's interesting, you know, we hear this term big data all the time, and I think it's kind of there's a timeline, believe it or not. 73 years ago is the first time the word big data actually came on the scenes. And in 1944, big data meant something completely different. You know what the worry was in 1944? Where are we going to store all the books? I'm serious, right? There was no conception of an internet. So they were worried about having over 200 million volumes in the Library of Congress, and where were they actually going to put those physical books? We actually had a transformation in 1996, which is, of course, 22 years ago, almost, when data storage, digital storage, became cheaper than physical storage. So I think many of you might remember days when actually storage was so expensive, we were actually held back in the amount of data we could keep. But today, we actually assume. How many of us have more than a terabyte of data available in cloud services? Anybody have the Dropbox of more than a terabyte, OneDrive more than a terabyte, Google more than a terabyte? I've got so many terabytes of data, you know, who knows? I have to go through and sort it out as much as I need to sort out my paper storage. But today, actually, 1997 was the first time the actual phrase big data was used in the sense that we use it today. So data and transactions, things are happening at an amazing rate. This is quite funny. I think this is what happens in an internet minute in 2016. I can hardly wait to see how it's changed for 2017. But I think there are a few things we see. So number one, 20.8 million WhatsApp messages. Right? How many of those? I think like 1 million of them came to me almost every minute, it seems like, just while I was sitting here. The world's going crazy. 150 million emails were sent every minute. Amazon, $203,000 per minute in transactions. They're doing pretty well, I'd say. Actually, I'd like to compare them to some of the other, especially the platforms in China, if we would ever get that data available. Facebook had 701,000 logins every minute, and I find it extremely interesting that Tinder swipes were a little bit more popular than Facebook logins. So right, left, right, where a lot happens every minute online. Thanks primarily to the fact that we carry the internet with us, right? Who uses their phone for phone calls? How many phone calls do you make or receive in a day? In fact, I'm annoyed these days when I get a phone call. I don't mind having a Skype session with my family back at home or whatever, but you know, when somebody calls me up, it's like, why are you bothering me? Just send me a message. In fact, we have more mobile phones today than we have people. And remember, there was a time we stood in a queue and had to have the right change in order to make a phone call. And many of you I can see out there wouldn't even imagine that those days would be possible. Today, of course, we carry the capability not just of making phone calls, but we have more power in our mobile phone than it took to send the man to the moon in 1969. So the phones have changed everything about the way we interact with our friends. It's changed completely how we interact with our families. It's interesting as well. I found some data. This is from a Deloitte study. And it says that 83% of people in the emerging markets, 62% of people in developed markets go on their phone within 30 minutes of waking up. Anybody sleep with the phone next to the bed? All right, anybody still use an alarm clock? Actually, that's the more important question. Or do we just use our phone, right? The number of times I fall asleep with my phone in bed with me, right? It's really hilarious. I rarely make it 30 minutes from when I wake up to when I've actually checked my phone the first time. They also share some data about what we do when we're on the phone. And it's interesting that somewhere around 2/3 of people actually communicate to the outside world as the first thing they do with their phone. They send text messages, they send email, they go on social media. I've learned, however, that if you live in a city with a lot of traffic, not a lot of traffic like we say here in Singapore, because we don't actually know traffic, right? But if you're in Bangkok or Jakarta, Manila, they all go on their phone immediately to see what the traffic is like and the weather. Because if it's not too bad, they can sleep longer. Right? That's the whole thing, right? So then after that, if they know they have to get up, then they go and check on social media. So this has led to some interesting social things, right? So we have this kind of amazing thing. I found an article on the business etiquette of using emoji in your emails. So I must say, I'm a big fan of just putting the little smiley in an email when I've actually done something, said something kind of terrible, but I don't want them to feel too bad as a result. I always put a little smiley or a winky or something there. And I found actually Twitter published some data about the most popular emojis that are used in different countries. And again, I think there's some interesting results here. Philippines and Indonesia, we see a lot of, I must say I don't really use this one, but we see a lot of that gritting their teeth. When I have teams in from Philippines and Indonesia, they all resonate with that. Italy, Japan, Korea, France, they're in love. Then we have kind of a terrible thing happening here. I think we're just about 1 year ago, right? You know, there was this thing called an election in the US, and I don't really want to talk about my politics too much, but I think this might be part of the result. Canada's also upset about it, you can see. They were much happier before. The UK, of course, that would be Brexit, so they're also struggling quite a bit. We have music, right? Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, and we get to India, Mexico, right? We're all at peace. So very interesting characteristics. I'm really sorry we didn't have Singapore on the list. I want to mention something a bit. I had Pikachu there, right, about Pokemon Go. I think Pokemon's a little bit not so much Pokemon Go anymore. I think we might have moved on. For me, the most interesting thing that's happening online or has just happened online about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, is this, right? The incredible phenomenon of Singles Day or 11/11. Right, so this is the Global Shopping Festival of 2017. The Global Shopping Festival of 2017. So in the 1990s is when the idea of Singles Day was first came out in China, right? It was called Anti-Valentine's Day. But in 2009, Alibaba got interested in it, and they decided to try to turn it into an amazing extravaganza of shopping. So this is pretty much what most companies look like on 11/11, right? It is a bargain basement. We had some 11/11 Singles Day bargains here in Singapore as well. I even took advantage of one from HP, my own company. How's that? But this year was absolutely extraordinary, right? So the Singles Day actually smashed this record. In 24 hours, $25 billion of transactions were done. This is just staggering. This makes that one day, that one promotional day, stand high in the rankings of the, if it were a country, it would be something like number 11 in the world for e-commerce. It's really, really a staggering day. By the way they do this is it starts 4 hours before. There's a big TV extravaganza. Actually, that's what that stage was. All right, so their major stars come. In 2016, they had David Beckham came. Nicole Kidman came, right? So they have a huge countdown. They get everybody excited about it, and they go 3, 2, 1. Now you can shop. Amazing, amazing. This is also quite interesting. This is a comparison of Singles Day versus the U.S. shopping holiday of Black Friday, which was just last week, which is the Friday after Thanksgiving, together with what they call Cyber Monday, which is the following Monday. Right, so this is what's interesting to me. In 2011, you can see that Black Friday and Cyber Monday were actually ahead, almost 3 times the sales of the transaction value in Alibaba, in Singles Day. And look what's happened. Right, so 2012, actually, they were the same. And today, actually, I should get an updated version of this, but as of last year, you can see that Singles Day was almost 3 times the size of what had been always considered the biggest shopping day on the planet. So I think really watch that space. I mean, I can say this, as you probably have gathered from my accent. I'm from the US. I'm one of those Americans that you just heard about from Pengma. But it's, you know, there's a lot to be learned. I think the world should start looking at some of what's going on in China in terms of commercial success. And I think another interesting thing is in the data that came out, 90%, this is the percentage of transactions that have been done on the mobile phone as of just 3 weeks ago. Right, number one by 90% was the transactions were done on a mobile phone. So really, and again, very much part of the reason is the payment platform is all on mobile. So today we're experiencing this thing called the power of zero. Right? Alibaba is the world's largest retailer, and they have no inventory. We have Facebook. I love this concept of Facebook. Imagine somebody said, we're going to create a new media brand, and it's going to be empty. Imagine you set up a TV channel, and it's empty. And you just say, okay, people, you can put some of your own programs on there. Who would have ever thought that would be successful? Or you publish a newspaper, and you just send out blank paper until people actually write articles and put it on there. But that's fundamentally what Facebook has done. They've created an empty shell. And how many of us are on Facebook? How many of us have posted something on Facebook already once today? Oh, a couple brave souls are willing to admit it. Right? We actually go and we make that a compelling platform. It's generating incredible advertising revenue. Right? We have Airbnb, Uber, Netflix. All of these companies are not in the traditional business model. They're all in the business of data. Right? What Facebook wants is the data about us. They want to be able to profile us. They want to be able to target advertising to us. They're in the business of data. What Airbnb wants is they want to know about our preferences. They want to know where we travel. They want to be able to target advertising to us based on data. And it's important to realize that once data becomes important, that we become aware that we also experience what we call the power of one. And the power of one is the power of the single consumer in today's world. So it used to be, I mean, as marketers, we could tell consumers when to buy and what to buy. Well, today's world, of course, that's all quite different. And the millennial generation, and somebody just said to me they're really tired of hearing about millennials, so I might have to change this a little bit, because maybe we are getting a little tired of it. But you know, it is the me generation. It's really about wanting the world on their own terms. Millennials are lazy, entitled narcissists who still live with their parents, but why? They'll save us all. Right? It is where the world is going. It's something we need to adapt to. And there's a quite famous little acronym, IWW, IWW, IWI. And probably you don't know what that means, but you will as soon as I show you. I want what I want, when I want it. And when do I want it? Now, absolutely. Right, so we need to be able to change the type of experiences that millennials are having with us. And you know, they're not saying, leave me alone. They're saying, show me advertising, tell me what's going on in the world, but do it in a way that's relevant to me. So as marketers, we have to change the way we think. We can no longer think in volume terms. We have to think in terms of value. And we want, of course, everybody's heard about this, but it's more important than ever before to find the right customer and match them with the right product at the right time, at the right price, through the right channel, and to communicate with them in a way that makes sense to them and is relevant to them. And of course, we need data to do this. So for me, data isn't just important, it's actually oxygen. Pure oxygen will kill us. Right? We can't live only in the world of data. We have to have the right data. We have to be responsible about the way we use data. And when we use data in the right way, it allows us to reach and target the right customers. It allows us to personalize and customize the experiences they have with us. And it also allows us to track and be accountable for our end result. So I want to share a couple of examples now of the way a few brands have been engaging customers and consumers in quite new ways. I want to start with one of my favorites. So everybody knows Coca-Cola, of course. I won't ask if anybody doesn't know Coca-Cola, but I think everybody knows Coca-Cola. And I see that that's a regular bottle of Coke, and that I call that the Coke for everyone. But there's also a Coke for me. And as soon as, in their campaign, the Share a Coke campaign, right, they turned that bottle of Coke from a Coke into my Coke. Now imagine if I'm in a shop and there's one bottle left of Coke with a Lisa on the label. A lot of other names on there, a lot of other product, but there's only one that says Lisa. If somebody else buys that who's right in front of me, I'm probably going to say, excuse me, is your name Lisa? I mean, or is that your wife's name or whatever, right? And I might even say, would you mind? Because that's kind of my Coke. And my name's Lisa, and here's my card, I'll prove it, right? So I'm not stealing it, I just would really like to have it because I think it belongs to me. A very interesting emotional link, right, with a bottle. And it launched and was part of a very successful campaign for Coke. Right? They spent more on the bottles that have names on the labels. The packaging itself cost more. But the impact was really quite tremendous. So they pilot tested this, interestingly, in Australia in 2011. Share a Coke itself as a campaign was bigger than that, but the idea of the names on the bottles started in Australia in 2011. They had consumption grew 7%. That's a lot for a big brand like Coke, such a mature brand. Right? In the US, it reversed a 10-year decline in sales. So they rolled it out to more than 80 countries worldwide, and in Singapore we had a version of it. We didn't really get the names on bottles. We have actually too much of an ethnically diverse mix here. I think based on our population, they just knew they would need 1,000 first names, and that might be unaffordable to do. But so we had things like, well, actually somebody brought in a case and they said, okay, the new Coke is here. So Lisa, you take a Coke out. And I take one out, and you know what it said? Auntie. And my colleagues started to make fun of me, and I pulled out another one, and it said uncle. So I said, this is yours. But we had things like BFF, and I love you, and I miss you, and shook, and right? So we had phrases, but we still use them, right? It's still an effective campaign, but not as powerful as actually using names. And the first thing that happened when people found names on bottles is they started to share on social media. So this is Paul Smith. Even he went on Instagram and was so excited that he found a bottle with his name on it. This is some interesting uses of the bottle. So this is one. All right, so this was in the UK, and they did names and phrases. So beautiful Eloise, will you marry me? So some young gentleman decided to propose to his fiancée. Is this a man's fridge, by the way? Don't want to make too big a deal of that, but certainly doesn't look like any fridge I've ever had. Christmas time came, right? So this is how Coca-Cola decided to celebrate Christmas with some advertising. But here's how consumers celebrated it. All right, this is really cute. This is a Spanish-speaking market, and we have Jesus, right? We have Angeles, the angels here. We have Maria and Jose. Papa Noel off to the side, right? They're very creative in what they do. Very popular combo. I'll tell you, the number of images you can find of Elsa and Anna, right? Yeah, exactly, very popular. People even started to make jokes, which, sorry, it's so low res, I looked for a better copy of it and couldn't find one, but anyway, I think that's pretty funny. And then finally, after all my searching, I finally found my own Coke. It took me a long time. It's even on a red carpet, though, so I figured it must be pretty special. Just to share something that Coke did in Korea, which is quite interesting. So 2015, was the anniversary of the bottle shape. So Coke was actually around somewhere since the 1800s, 1870-something. But the shape of the bottle was 100 years old. So they decided to commemorate that with a campaign. So you can see that they sent out 5 bottles to each of 1,500 opinion leaders, 500 celebrities. And every one of the bottles they sent them actually had a photo of that celebrity or opinion leader on it, right? So they chose people where they could get photos online. And They had as the end result was a 6 times increase in sales during the promotional period, because everybody, of course, went on, all these opinion leaders and celebrities wrote about how amazing this was. And just so you know, I wasn't left out. Now, this is cheating, because we did a special printing run of these. So, by the way, all these opinion leaders are my colleagues. They're not actually. So those are the ones I was able to take photos of. But, you know, somebody actually stole, I thought they stole my bottle. I was really quite flattered by that. And then somebody said, oh, no, they probably just broke it. You know, like, oh, well, thanks so much. So one thing then, you know, is to take this concept of taking a product and turning it from a product into my product. I want to share now an example of a company that's taking a book and turning it into my book. And this is a company. It was originally called Lost My Name. They had one book, which is the one I'll share with you today, called Lost My Name. But they've rebranded, and don't ask me why, but their new name is Wonderbly. And so you can find them online. The only way to buy these books is to go online. So here's what you do. So you go and you fill in the first name. By the way, I'm not advertising them, but it is a fixed price. I believe it's I was going to say $43.99 or something like that in Singapore dollars. You can pay in Singapore dollars, but it's a fixed price and shipping is free. So no matter, you'll see, no matter how long the book is, the same price. So you put in the name and decide if it's going to be for a boy or a girl, and you click Create Your Book, and you have a chance to see the book as an e-book first. So I want to share how this works. So this is you can see the little girl who lost her name and the little boy who lost her name. So one of my colleagues ordered me this book, right? So the little girl who lost her name. And it's a story about a little girl. She wakes up in the morning, and on her wardrobe, where her name usually is, it's missing, it's blank. So she's very upset. And she decides she has to find a name. She can't have no name. So she goes out on an adventure. And the first thing that happens to her is she meets a lion. And she's a bit scared of the lion at first, and then she starts to cry, and the lion says, what's wrong, little girl? And she says, I lost my name. I don't have a name. I have to find a name. He says, well, just calm down. Don't worry, little girl. You can have the L from my name. I'm a lion. You can have L. She goes on a little bit farther, and now she meets an imp. And the imp is being quite naughty, and so this is fun. She plays around for a bit, and then she says, wait, I'm actually quite sad. And the imp says, don't worry. You know, you can have an I from my name. She goes on a little bit farther, and now she finds a squid, and the squid is all tangled up. She helps the squid, and the squid says, thank you so much. You know, you can have an S from my name. And finally, probably no surprise, she meets an aardvark. And the aardvark says, oh, what's wrong, little girl? And she says, I lost my name. He says, don't worry, there are 2 A's at the beginning of my name. You can have one. So now she goes home. She's very happy. She goes back to bed, and she gets in her bed, and she looks up at the wardrobe, and there is her name, Lisa. All right? Very cool. Now, what my colleague didn't know, my given name is actually Elizabeth. Elizabeth gets a much better book, a much bigger adventure, right? And in fact, there are 2 E's in Elizabeth. So first I meet an eagle, and then I meet an elk, right? Because you imagine reading this story to a kid. What, another eagle, you know? And I then thought, well, I ordered Elizabeth for myself, and for my husband, I ordered Joseph. By the way, he's never been allowed to touch this book, because he even says he's never been allowed to read it, but that's true, so I don't mind. So Joseph also has an E in it. So they asked me if both these books were going to the same household, and if to prevent arguing over the letters, I would like yet a third thing for the E, and so we chose elephant. Right, so very, very inventive. And of course, every book arrives and is unique for that child. So interesting story, they actually launched in 2014. It was a group of guys, they went, actually it's 2 Israeli guys and 2 guys from the UK, and they went on Dragon's Den, right, which is a TV show that gets funding for startups. and they won 100,000 pounds on Dragon's Den. And by January, they had sold 132,000 books. They still had only their 100,000 of funding, so by April that had grown up to 500,000 books. By the way, primarily in the UK or in Europe. By June of that year, they suddenly attracted the attention of Google Ventures, and they got $9 million, which has changed their life quite dramatically, you might guess. They just signed an arrangement with the Roald Dahl estate. And so they're now taking like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the Roald Dahl stories, and those can now be told with the child, and the child being part of the story. So that's, we're still seeing that coming. I'll just mention here, they now have another book. We're not going to play the video because of timing. But they also now have a book called The Birthday Thief. And you give the child's birthday, and of course then it's a story about the birthday. And the birthday disappears, and of course there's a little adventure to get the birthday back. So think about this now. Think of the data that they're getting. Right? So they start out with just the name of the child, and they find out if these two children are in the same household, whatever. They're starting to build a profile. Right? I mean, it sounds kind of creepy, but it's true. They're able to start building a profile. Now they get the birth date. And you know the birth date's going to be the same next year. There's a great opportunity to market once you know the birth date of the child. Right? So we see more and more very interesting things from these guys. The third example I want to share is very interesting. I must say, I hate the idea of digital marketing. I know that's really heresy today. But I don't think there is marketing without digital marketing. So I think that all marketing has digital in it. If there's a company anywhere that thinks they don't have to take the internet and mobile into consideration, they probably are still somewhere in the last century. But anyway, so this is an interesting example. This is a company, a case study from a company called Keds Kids. And Keds are shoes, right? They're like rubber-soled, canvas-topped shoes. Right? You guys know Keds? You know, when I was a kid, we called them gym shoes, but or tennis shoes. And I think we don't kind of have that concept anymore with Nike, and we have so many different types of shoes these days. We don't really have the generic gym shoe anymore. But Keds has a line extension into kids apparel, so a bit like Gap Kids might be. Right? And so what they would do is every year, 3-4 times, they'd send out a catalog to all. They had a loyalty program, so all the catalog would go out to all their members and show the new collection. And they came to their agency and said, it's really expensive to print and send out this catalog. So we actually have a new idea. Can you just send a postcard out to everybody and tell them to come into the store and pick up the catalog, that the new catalog is here and to come into the store? Well, thank goodness the agency said, this is the stupidest idea we've ever heard. Why is mom going to drive all the way down to the store to pick up a catalog? I mean, she has many other places to shop. Doesn't need to have Keds Kids. It's not like the only store anywhere around, right? So they said, why don't we think about this in a little bit of a different way? So they said, we'll start with a postcard. We don't have a problem with that. We'll start with a postcard. We'll send a postcard to everyone, but we're not going to tell them to come into the store and just pick up a catalog. We're going to ask them to go to our Facebook page and design the cover of the catalog. In fact, they can put their own kids' photos on the cover of the catalog. They will say which store they want to go into to pick it up. And their kids will be the stars. I mean, the inside of the catalog will be the same for everybody, but on the cover, it will have the kids' photos. So here's a little video that explains that.
We created a campaign for a fashion brand for kids. We wanted to take their existing customers in the real world and we wanted to migrate them to the fan page of the brand. We created 15,000 catalogs of the new collection that every mother could get in the store that she chooses, but her kids will basically star on the cover of the catalog, and she will also write a personal message to them. So every mother, during the first launch of the new collection, came to the stores and she got the catalog with her kids.
Okay, so you heard that he said 15,000 catalogs were actually printed with the kids' pictures on it. Their database was 50,000, 50. This is a staggering response rate. Now, at the beginning, they actually said one per customer. Mom was way smarter than this. So Mom wants two. So she opens up 2 Facebook accounts, of course, right? And she's getting other people. And finally, somebody said, I mean, what are we thinking? I mean, it's not like somebody is going to sell catalogs or, you know, it's not a side business for somebody. If Mom wants to give catalogs with her kids' photos on it, who is she giving them to? Grandmother number 1, grandmother number 2, favorite auntie, all people who might come in and actually buy gifts or, you know, product from Ked's Kids. So interesting result. Number 1, instead of mailing out 50,000 catalogs, they mailed out 50,000 postcards. Then Mom came into the store. By the way, I think it was over 99% redemption. I mean, Mom is not going to have catalogs sitting there with her kids' photos on it and not pick it up. So they did actually ask for mailing address just in case, but they said there were no orphans. No children were left behind in the shop. And not only that, but they tracked the sale. And what they found was that when Mom came in to pick up the catalog, she actually spent between $20 and $50 more than the average shopping basket transaction was in the store. So this was a huge, huge success. Obviously, the catalogs themselves, those with pictures on the cover, were a bit more expensive each, but they saved so much other money and made back the ROI on the result. So I just really want to wrap up because I think I have to be running nearly over time. You know, this incredibly fast-changing world, and I think it's important that we not be afraid to seize the day and change the way we think, to think about engaging customers, using data in a responsible way to create these unique, relevant experiences that actually change the way they think about us as a brand and even sometimes about themselves. I have to say the journey's not an easy one. We see companies, very rarely is there one campaign that everybody says, wow, we discovered it. By the way, if there were one campaign answer and everybody just had to do that, none of us would need to study marketing. So fortunately, there's not just one answer for everyone. But I encourage all of you, you know, have a passion for engaging customers, embracing the new world and doing things in new and different ways. Make sure that you're really courageous and committed to you know, take that first step. It can be quite different for many companies to think in these new ways. And finally, keep the long-term view. Yes, you'll have some hiccups along the way. Sometimes short-term, sometimes it's a big success, sometimes it's not such a big success, but we need to be thinking about the long-term and stay in touch with how consumers are changing. 5 years ago, we had no idea we'd ever be standing up and talking about things like this, right? As this is where the world is. The world in 5 or 10 years is an unimaginable place, in my view. So I hate to end with Charles Darwin, because we probably should have started with him. But anyway, just remember, you know, he says the survival of the fittest is not about being the strongest or about being the most intelligent. It's actually about being the ones that can adapt and respond to the changing environment around us. With that, I thank you all very much.
Thank you, Lisa, for an exciting talk and the most interesting examples she has given.